Hi guys, Yuki here, back with Seduce Me. Let's just get right back into it. I avoided talking about the ride back home yesterday, saying the ride was a one-time thing. I'll be riding with you guys from now on to and from school. The girls seemed very happy. We entered the school, quickly gathered our things from our lockers, and headed to class. And sorry, but my voice is all crackly and nasty. Allergy season. There are no events to our surprise. History wasn't exactly fun, but our teacher was great. At least he would have been great if he was in class that day. Naomi and Suzu took their seats around me, Suzu in front of me and Naomi beside me before the class bell rang and the class was greeted by the dean.
Students, you'll be having a substitute for class today. Everyone meet.
Miss Diana.
My heart stopped. At the door with the dean was Diana, looking over the students and smirking as her eyes landed on me. She stood up to the teacher's desk, ignoring or welcoming the whispers from the other students, before sitting on the wood and crossing her legs.
Thank you, Dean. You can go now.
With a wave of Diana's hand, the dean left the classroom, closed the door, and left the area. Diana smiled at us, making my stomach turn. What was she going to do?
So, history. History. Such a silly thing, isn't it? I mean, what do we care about the past? We're in the present.
The rest of the class, including Naomi and Suzu, hesitantly nodded in agreement, unsure of what this new teacher, but willing to listen to more of what she had to say.
The present is so full of wonderful things. While the labors of the past are the reason we have many things, it is our chance and privilege to utilize what has been given to us.
Her charm was almost infectious. The class was practically starting to eat out of her hand. I looked around to see classmates grinning and agreeing with Diana. I pressed my lips together as I listened further. I had no choice.
What's even funnier about human beings is that some of the bits of history we hear is either made up or completely biased to one side. It's like a story you read as a child. You hear of the princess and the prince, and they live happily ever after. But what about the family she left behind? What of her friends?
The students listened and agreed intently to her words. I could tell, however, that these words were all targeted at me.
The original story of the Little Mermaid, a perfect example of biased opinion. Here we have a girl who thinks she can be with this prince, but this prince has to marry a princess. What would happen if the mermaid had her way? What makes the mermaid so important that the princess has to suffer the consequences?
It doesn't matter what happens to the princess. The rest of the class turned their heads to me. Naomi and Suzu looked at me with equally surprised looks. I kept my eyes to Diana. If I was the mermaid, I wasn't going to let the princess take my prince away. Diana stared at me before smiling and turning her body to fully face me.
Oh? And why does it not matter?
The story isn't about the princess. The story is about the mermaid and the prince.
Ah, but that is exactly my point. While the story talks about the mermaid and the prince's romance, we don't see the problems of the kingdom the prince rules. While we are all fixated with this love story, we ignore the fact the kingdom would fall apart without the marriage between the prince and princess.
She kept her eyes to me as she spoke. I knew she wanted to make her words stick in my mind, but I didn't listen. It was one thing to be a fictional story. It was another to try and ruin someone's life for selfishness. Diana chuckled and looked back to the class.
Well, luckily in the real story of the Little Mermaid, the mermaid knows that what she was doing was wrong, and she threw herself into the ocean, turning into sea foam.
Some of the students that surrounded me mumbled in surprise, obviously not knowing the real story. However, Diana was wrong once again. That's not true. Once again, the class looked to me, and Diana faced me with another smile.
Not true. How so?
The trade-off for becoming human was marrying the prince or turning into sea foam. However, she was also given the choice to kill the prince and turn back into a mermaid. The mermaid didn't because she loved him and sacrificed herself for that love. That is a story worth telling, not some princess getting her way, but of a tragedy that had befallen on a girl who only wanted love. The class applauded me, with Susie giving me her usual punch to my shoulder and Naomi smiling at my logic. Diana, however, finally grew an almost angered face at me.
Interesting. So what you are saying is that the princess should be given no mind.
The story is not about the princess. The story is about the mermaid, and the mermaid should have gotten her prince.
Even at the risk of a kingdom falling apart?
Even if the entire world fell apart around them, duty does not overrule love, and the princess needs to realize this. The applause that followed intensified with whoops and hollers. I felt a wave of confidence roll through my body. Dayna wasn't going to win. I wasn't going to let her. Dayna then stopped talking and looked to the clock on the wall, reading it quickly. This class had barely begun. Why was she looking at the time? Dayna then leaned against the blackboard and smiled to us. I became worried. Oops. The students suddenly began to chat happily or in confusion at the situation. Many thought it was a dream come true, others knew better. Before anyone could protest, however, Dayna pressed her finger to her lips and counted down with her fingers in the air. 3, 2, 1. The speakers of the classroom gently awoke, giving us an announcement we would never believe.
Attention students! Due to an emergency faculty meeting, we will be closing school for the remainder of the day and this entire week. Please leave the school quickly and quietly and have a good rest of the week.
She used her powers on them. Damn it! I felt the need to stop her, but how could I stop a demon in the middle of a public area? Dayna smiled before gesturing to the door.
Have a nice week off. School will resume next week.
Many of the students filed out, chatting to each other about new impromptu plans. Suzu was beyond happy, but Naomi was hesitant. Before we could pack up and leave, however, Dayna stepped to us.
Excuse me, little miss. I'd like you to stay a little while. There's something we need to discuss.
As Dayna looked to Suzu and Naomi, she snapped her fingers, making my friends tense up.
You two can head home. Don't worry about your friend until next week, okay? If you contact her, she won't reply, so don't bother. If she contacts you, ignore her, because she's just fine.
As if on command, Suzu and Naomi left the room. I tried to march after them, but Dayna stepped in my path, warning me with my eyes that if I followed, there would be hell to pay. I had lost my two friends, at least for the week. Dayna and I were alone, just like she wanted. I slammed my hands on the desk in front of me and glared at Dayna. What are you doing, and what are you thinking?
What? Do I not make a good teacher? I figured you should have a little lesson, so I took matters into my own hands.
Whatever you're trying to do won't work.
You really think so, dear? And what makes you so sure about that?
What was making me so sure? Why was I confident? Were the boys worth this? My thoughts began to fill with doubt. All the uncertainties about this whole ordeal began to cloud my mind. If the boys were ever found out, there'd be hell to pay. Was it worth it? What about Diana? What would she do to me? Would she make my parents forget about me completely? Would she ruin my friend's life just out of spite? In my gut, I felt a stone of confidence trying to fight back, but the heaviness of my thoughts began to dissolve that stone little by little. What was going on with me? I looked up to Diana once again to see her gaze boring into my eyes. She was using her powers on me. This time I was away from home, so I couldn't escape. Or could I? Did I want to? The way she stared at me made me feel warm and fuzzy inside my chest. I felt like melting. Dayna looked at a hand under my chin and ran her thumb over my lips, licking her own. I could feel little shots of energy sipping from under my skin into my chin where she held me.
Now, let's have a little taste of that sweet, virginal sexual energy.
I watched as she leaned in, ready to kiss me and take my energy. Half of my body felt elation at the idea. The other half completely rejected it and didn't want her to even touch me. Matthew! Suddenly, Dayna stopped in her tracks.
Matthew? Who is...
It then dawned on her.
Ah, one of the boys. Why don't you tell me which boy is Matthew?
I I felt myself nod in compliance. The fourth. Dayna giggled in reply before letting go of my face and stepping back.
Really? The child? With you?
I nodded once again, but this time it was partly of my own decision in reply. Dayna let out a sound that made the cats purr before stepping away from me.
All right, then. Well, if it's the fourth son you're infatuated with, you should really rethink your romantic options.
Dayna chuckled before kissing my nose, where I felt a shot of energy zap out of my body, almost making me dizzy and recoil. Dayna then turned to the desk and sat on the wood, crossing her legs.
You can go now. Remember, no class for the rest of the week.
And how am I supposed to get home? My two friends left me here thanks to you.
Oh, were they your ride? My apologies. Let me help, then.
Dayna then lifted her hand and snapped her fingers. I suddenly felt the floor sink from underneath me, forcing me to look down. A purple pentagram surrounded my feet, pulling me into the ground. Whoa! Before I could fight, however, I sank fully into the floor, fading into darkness and shutting my eyes. As I opened them, I felt my silk sheets around me, soothing my anxiety from the darkness that previously surrounded me. What the? Why did Dayna bring me home? Was this an illusion? Was I being tricked? Something was going on. Hold on a sec. I sat up in bed looking around me. I was indeed in my room. There was no mistake about that. Why? Dayna is too strange. Was this a game? Was this part of her plan to get the boys back? I was lost and confused more than ever, despite my logical thought trying to piece the puzzle that Dayna is together. The more I tried to solve her, the less I understood about the situation I was in. I was interrupted, however, by my door suddenly opening, revealing the boys with Damien's hand on the doorknob.
Miss, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in school?
I furrowed my eyebrows and stared at Damien, asking him to answer their question through my thoughts.
Diana sent her back here. She invaded her school and sent all the students back home.
What is that bitch up to? Seriously! Diana's playing around for no reason.
Maybe it's part of her plan.
The boys continued to argue back and forth about Dayna, fueling an almost jealous curiosity in me. Damien seemed to be too deep within the talking to notice my thoughts, for he didn't even stop talking alongside his brothers. What was Dayna after them? Why did she want to bring them back? What was so important about the boys that she would travel to the human world to get them? What was going on? I decided enough was enough. I needed answers. Hey! The boys stopped arguing, staring at me in surprise. I held my hands and fists on my lap, mustering the courage to continue to speak despite my abrupt shout. Why is Dayna here? What does she want to bring you all back? What exactly did you all run from? Why did you run from it?
Miss,
Don't miss me, please. I need to know what is going on. I won't be left in the dark about this. I want to know what I'm facing. The boys looked at each other hesitantly, unsure what to reply. Finally, Sam pushed Damien towards bed, making him buckle and land on his knees with his torso over the edge of the mattress.
Damien, do the thing.
Thing? What thing?
Sam, you're not suggesting.
Why not? She deserves to know everything, especially if Diana is targeting her.
Sam's right.
I guess we have no choice then.
I was getting confused. What was Damien about to do? Damien stood before climbing onto the bed with me, sitting across from me on his knees.
We're going to show you everything. You have to trust me, okay? The minute you stop trusting me, the vision will stop.
Vision?
It'll be okay. Just trust him.
I looked to Matthew, unsure of what was going on, but I nodded. If this was the only way to learn, then this was my chance to know. Damien gently pressed his hands on each side of my head, gently pressing his thumbs into the skin up of my eyebrows. I could only stare as Damien as his eyes began to glow gold and energy began to be pulled out of me and forced into my head. Within seconds, my vision went black once again. I wasn't sure of what Damien was doing, but soon shapes and textures slowly began to appear around me. I found myself sitting on a stone floor in the middle of what looked like a fantasy throne room. Where am I? I looked down at myself to stand only to see my body as translucent as a ghost. Whoa! I jumped up and inspected my hands in a sudden panic. I was see-through. Why? What was going on?
How dare they try to negotiate with me? Do they not know whom they speak to?
I gasped and ran behind a nearby pillar away from the voice. The sound of his anger and words frightened every bone in my body, turning me into a frightened child.
My lord, please calm yourself.
Calm? They're merely testing my resolve. I have more than half of a mind to send my greatest armies to take what should be mine. They are mere insects in the way of my kingdom's expansion.
They merely asked for a marriage joining.
So I'm to bow to them and share my land that I have so rightfully conquered?
I peeked from behind the pillar to see a large demon covered in royal clothes but buff enough to be a military commander. His rage practically emanated from his body as he growled at his servant.
They are willing to give their land to you, sire. All they ask is for one of your sons to marry their daughter, whom I might add is as beautiful as can be.
This is ridiculous! To suggest that I need their approval to take their land is beyond insanity. What makes them think I care about their precious daughter?
Did I mention that she is a prodigy of her kind, sire?
A prodigy?
Yes, my lord. This succubus is a master of her skills in magic and mind manipulation. She is said to sway armies with a snap of her fingers, despite being as young as she is.
Impossible!
If only it were, sire. This succubus is dangerous, but would be a great asset to have should we agree to this arrangement. The only reason she cannot faze you, my lord, is because you are the strongest demon in the plains.
Is this supposed to change my mind?
Yes, my lord.
You are doing a terrible job at convincing me.
My apologies, sire.
I was lost. I could tell that they were talking about Dayna, but why?
Father.
I quickly turned my head to see another demon who looked like a mere child, staring at the demon commander on the throne. Father?
Ah, Racetrack. Have you finished your training?
Yes, Father.
Then what do you want?
I want to be with my brothers the best of the day, Father.
The demon commander walked to the young demon and gripped his hair, picking him up off the ground and forcing him to look at him at his snarl. The young demon, however, looked unfazed.
Huh. Arrogance. Why should I allow you to be with them? I should kill you.
Because I want to be with them, Father.
I could only stare at the young demon face his father, despite the massive difference between them. This young demon seemed weaker and easy to kill versus a demon commander. Why would this man kill his son, though? Was this commander that ruthless? However, I wasn't expecting him to laugh and release the young demon.
Good! Assertive even in the face of danger. That is why you are my favorite son.
I could only stare wide-eyed as the commander placed his hands on the demon's shoulder.
Very well. Go. Tomorrow, you will show me your training.
The little demon grinned widely before running off.
I have a thought.
Yes, my lord?
How old is this daughter?
As old as your 5th, sire.
Do you believe this proposal is worth it?
Yes, sire.
Tell those insects that they are safe for now. I will consider their offer.
Sire, are you certain?
Did I stutter? Now go!
The demon servant quickly ran off, but as soon as he passed the pillar I was hiding behind, he along with the commander vanished into thin air. What had happened? I didn't get the time to try to figure that out before a demon who looked around my age walked into the room reading a book. Is that...
Racetrack, your nose is stuck in those books. Will you not lift your head up from them once in a while?
Huh? That voice. I circled around the pillar to see a second demon leaning against another pillar and smirking at Racetrack.
Aren't you supposed to be with your mother practicing the harpsichord?
I am, but I had a feeling that you were in danger.
In danger? What are you...
Attack!
All of a sudden, three shadows zipped through the room and slammed into Racetrack, forcing him to fall on the ground and drop his book. As the sight cleared for me, there were three other demons in the dog pile with Racetrack at the bottom.
Get up! No way! You haven't had a break in months from those stupid books. It's time for punishment!
Death by brotherhood! No more reading!
I told you that you were in danger.
I suddenly knew who these demons were. It's the boys. Even in the demon world, their brotherly connection was astounding. They were merely younger versions of themselves. One of the demons, who I assumed was Matthew, grabbed the book from the floor and opened it, reading it mockingly.
How can you read this, Racetrack? It's all about war strategy. It's boring.
I have to, Zakaru. Get off!
There's only one thing you need to know about strategy. Kill them all. Take no prisoners.
You sound just like Father.
I couldn't help but giggle. It was cute to see them acting childish with each other. Eventually, James managed to push his brothers off of him and stand brushing himself off.
You all are reckless.
At least we have fun.
It's true. You haven't been with us in weeks. Don't you think it's time for a break?
I'm sure Father won't mind.
But I have to...
I know you want to, Racetrack.
Damn it.
What is going on here?
I shot my head to the voice to see the commander, aged a little, staring at the boys with his arms crossed with his arms across his chest. Damien quickly dashed and hid behind Sam, peeking over his shoulder to see the large commander.
Nothing is going on. We just passed by each other.
Then why does your brother have your book?
I was showing him what I was learning, Father.
Return to your studies, Racetrack. The rest of you out of my sight. Do not disturb your brother again.
I could only stare as James gently took his book and, without looking at his brothers, returned to reading. The commander walked past the remaining brothers, growling at Sam and Damien before leaving the room. What was up with that?
Don't worry about it. We'll find a way to get him back.
I don't know. He's on a very tight leash.
Ezra, you're quiet. What did you hear?
He's going to a negotiation meeting. He's going to arrange a marriage.
A marriage? For who?
It must be for one of us.
He hasn't decided who will marry her. It's a girl from a kingdom he wants to take over.
But that's uncharacteristic of him. Usually he'd just attack with the army.
Whatever the case is, one of us is getting married.
I hope it isn't me.
What about Racetrack? He's the eldest.
It would make sense, but having a succubus marrying one of us means that she'll be practically married to all of us.
Well, what should we do?
Before the conversation could continue, the boys vanished into thin air, fading into different colored mists. They were replaced by an older Damien and Matthew sitting with each other in the middle of the throne room.
Do you think we should?
I really want to.
I want to as well. Still, it'll be hard to convince Racetrack, since he's the one about to be married, and he's the favorite.
We don't know that, Zakaru. Maybe she's set to marry you.
No way! I don't want to get married.
I don't think you'll have a problem with that baby face of yours.
I looked over to see Sam join the duo, crossing his arms and raising an eyebrow at his brothers.
What are you two talking about?
We got into contact with the human world again.
Come on, Ezra. You give humans too much attention.
No way! You gotta listen! They apparently have stores and books and schools and stuff!
So what? It's full of humans who piss on each other for no reason. They're no better than the devil spawn.
Nuh-uh! The one we were talking to wasn't like that!
How do you know, Zakaru?
Because I do!
What is going on here?
They want to go to the human world.
The human world?
Racero, think about it. You won't have to marry that girl and be the heir anymore. You could be with us, and we can make lives for ourselves in the new world.
Now you're just talking nonsense.
I vote that we do it.
Huh? Oh, not you two.
Think about it. This may be our chance to finally get away from this political nonsense we're stuck in. We may be nobles, but we're still our own beings.
Racetrack is in.
What? Azrael!
Whoa! So how do we get there?
Are you kidding me? You don't even know how we'd get there.
A simple spell should work, but it would require someone from the human world to help us get there.
We can ask him.
Oh, he'd definitely help us.
I'm not so sure about...
Racetrack, aren't you tired of pleasing Father all of the time?
I am, but...
If you stay, you'll be married off and become ruler of Father's kingdom. You'll have no time for yourself or with us, and you'll be constantly at war with the other realms for power. You'll most likely turn into the spitting image of Father.
What he's saying is get your head out of your ass and let's go. If you don't say yes, I'll drag your princely ass with us. I don't care what that bastard of a father wants.
Come on, Racero.
All right, let's do this. What's the plan?
I couldn't believe it was happening. I was seeing the history of their lives before my eyes. They were nobles, and James was the heir to the kingdom of the commander ruled. Even more so, he was going to be married to Dayna. They sacrificed everything to leave and be together. They'd rather be free than remain in their noble roles. I started to feel a little jealous. They were able to leave while I was still expected to be what my father wanted me to be. How they were able to leave was uncertain still, but I knew I would learn in time. I closed my eyes and mentally asked Damien to end the vision. As soon as I asked, the world around me slowly vanished, and I was brought back to the bedroom where I sat with my head nestled in Damien's hands. My vision began to clear, letting me fully see the boys around me, all with concerned faces.
So, you now know exactly who we are.
Dayna is the girl you were arranged to marry?
Not anymore. Once we left, the arrangement was broken. With no sons to marry off, her dad couldn't go through with the marriage deal.
If Dayna is here for us, that means she's trying to save her kingdom from being attacked.
That's not true. She wants to rule our kingdom. Having one of us will give her the right to our kingdom, as much as we'd have right over hers.
So she's a gold digger!
Well, with a kingdom like ours, what succubus wouldn't want to marry us for it?
It all made sense. She wanted them so that she could finally take over the opposing kingdom. She knew that, despite her power, she wouldn't be able to fight against their father, so she had to find another way in. That manipulative. Before I could continue, I felt my head suddenly get heavy and dizzy. I gripped my head, mewling under my breath. What the...
I took too much. I'm so sorry.
Rest now. There's no need to do anything more today.
The boy suddenly rushed over and helped me lay back down as my vision was painted in white polka dots. I needed sleep badly. Instantly, I closed my eyes and let darkness consume me. After what seemed like hours, I finally woke up, slightly refreshed. My body knew that if I slept any longer, I would be up all night, which was not part of the plan for the day. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, letting a soft groan escape my lips. In response, something beside my bed shuffled, causing me to look over. I didn't know what I was expecting. Beside me, sitting in a chair beside the bed, was Matthew, rousing himself up to see me awake. I smiled at him, seeing his slightly ruffled hair and tired eyes.
Oh, you're awake. How do you feel?
Better. Matthew nodded before he looked down at the bed, taking my hands into his.
I'm really sorry. I'm really, really sorry.
You didn't do anything. Matthew, it's not your fault.
No, please listen. I know that Dayna and Malix have come after you because of us, so it's our fault that you're constantly in danger. If I hadn't convinced everyone to come to the human world, we would have never been attacked by Maliks and hunted down and brought you in danger and...
I quickly reached over and put my finger to his lips, stopping him from going any further. I didn't want to hear anymore. Matthew, it's okay. I wanted to help you out. I offered to let you all stay. Nothing is your fault. I gently moved my hand and cupped Matthew's cheek, staring at him with concern. I didn't want him to hold guilt in his mind after the whole ordeal. Dayna was desperate and she'd hunt anyone for them. It wasn't his fault she was desperate enough to hunt them down. However, I grew curious. So Matthew, you're a noble? Matthew looked at me and gave me a goofy smile.
I was once, but even if I had the title, I didn't really feel like a noble.
How come?
Well, I was the fourth noble son of the Demon Lord. With Eric and Sam ahead of me in case James couldn't fulfill his duties, there was no way I was getting the throne. So I spent the majority of my time trying to make my mother happy. She was always unhappy.
Oh. Unhappy? How come?
Well, my dad was kind of... well, he married 4 different women. Each of us came from a different mother, and my mother was the last to be married and bear a son. The thing with succubi, though, is that they get jealous very easily.
So what happened?
The other wives got mad and scorned each other. It wasn't violent, but we never ate together for a reason. My mom, though, was too proud to have jealousy. She was the last woman the Demon Lord married, so she felt important. She felt that because he stopped marrying, she had the charm to stop his marrying spree.
Matthew let out a small laugh, a hint of depression lingering in the breath he let out.
But then the Demon Lord took another woman and she bore him a son outside of wedlock. Damien. The wives, including my mother, were furious. In response, the Demon Lord had a spell cast on them, turning them into spiritual orbs.
That's horrible! Matthew nodded, pressing his lips together in both agreement and sadness.
They could never have physical form, and they lost all their powers. They became slaves trapped in the Demon Lord's castle. However, they were kept alive to make sure their sons grew up to be competent demons.
I'm sorry. Matthew gently shrugged, letting a small nostalgic smile grace his lips.
She taught me how to be a demon, though. Not just a demon, a grown, adult demon. I read books, I learned strategy, everything that James was doing under the Demon Lord's watch. Only, I trained with just my mother. She wanted me to surprise the Demon Lord one last time, and maybe take the throne away from James.
Matthew then reached into his pocket and took out a small mirror.
Here, I'll show you.
Matthew handed it to me and sent a wave of blue mist into it. It began to glow until it enveloped the room into a bright light. When the light had subsided, I was back in the main hall of the demon castle. I looked around, feeling unable to move, but I could practically see everything as clear as I had before. However, my focus gathered on Matthew, sitting on the throne as if it was his and reading a book. For some reason, Matthew reminded me of James at that moment. He seemed engrossed in his reading each word and absorbing each meaning. Him on the throne surprisingly fit him. There was something about him.
This is an easy read.
A saddened cry, however, echoed through the hall, forcing Matthew to stop, close the book, and stand from the throne.
Mother?
I looked around, confused at the cry and where it was coming from. Oh, I'm listening. I can hear it faintly. It seemed to just echo through the room without any source of direction. Matthew sighed and placed the book on the armrest of the throne before he cupped his hand together.
Fly and comfort her, will you?
As Matthew opened his hand, a small bird with blue and purple feathers perked up from the hiding place. Matthew smiled before releasing it into the air. I watched as it flew off and glided through an open archway. The sound of its flapping wings faded into the air as it flew farther into the castle.
Come on.
I could tell that Matthew was holding his breath. He must have cared very deeply for his mother. It was incredibly sweet. At last, the sound of the crying stopped, making Matthew release a happy sigh.
There we go.
Matthew cracked his knuckles in approval and reached for his book. However, before he could even graze the cover with his fingers, the sound of pattering entered the room.
You! What son? Away from the throne!
Alright!
Ah, what am I going to do with you? You're a child.
Matthew glared at the servant as the servant quickly brushed the throne off, like there was dust all over it.
The next time I see you on the throne, I will inform the Demon Lord. Understand?
Yes.
The demon servant continued to brush over the throne before knocking the book from their armrest. Matthew froze as the servant quickly patted over and picked it up.
What is this? A book? Why do you have it?
I was reading.
You read? You don't need to read. You're never going to need knowledge for anything, fourth son.
I saw Matthew's eye twitch, making me grimace. This servant sure had a mouth. It was annoying at the very least.
I'll just take this book and bring it to the heir himself to read. He's reading faster than the library can provide.
But that's...
Racetrack's next area of study.
The servant began to walk away, ignoring Matthew's glare of anger. The servant stopped, however, to look to Matthew to pound one more nail into the wound.
Let's face it, kid. You have the smallest horns, the smallest frame, and the least amount of power among the noble sons. You'll never be like them, so just stop trying. Use your incubus powers on others who have a child fetish or something.
That's awful. The demon looked at Matthew up and down before rushing off wherever he came from. As the servant disappeared, Matthew summoned a knife and chucked it in the direction where the servant left. The knife embedded itself in the hard stone beside the door into the hall.
Ugh, I hate that guy. Disgusting pig fawn.
Matthew walked over and sat on the foot of the throne, clearly aggravated. Eventually, Matthew stopped the magic, lowering the mirror and holding it into his hand before looking to me.
I had hoped to show you my mother, but I guess the mirror wanted to show you something else. Sorry.
That servant is terrible.
Tell me about it. He served the Demon Lord almost his whole life. Ugly pig fawn.
Matthew laughed while I laughed at the insult. It was good to see Matthew in good spirits despite what was shown and what was happening around us. Still, it was sad to see that he was considered the child of the noble sons. He could read books of knowledge that his brother hadn't read, and he seemed caring. It was insulting to see someone tear him down like that. Matthew smiled at me before pocketing the mirror.
Whatever. Thankfully we got out of there, so I could be with my brothers like a normal family. No hierarchies, no politics, no pig funds, nothing.
I smiled. It was good to see that he saw the positive side. However, his face slowly turned into a sad one before he looked down at the bed. Matthew?
You've done a lot for me and my brothers. Sheltering us, letting us continue to live here. It may not seem like much, but for us it's everything. But I don't want you to get hurt because of us.
I watched in speechless silence as Matthew lifted his head, his eyes full of almost hopelessness.
That's why I'm sorry.
Matthew lowered his head in shame. I couldn't help but feel my heart squeeze within my chest at the sight. He truly cared. Matthew let out a small sigh before looking to me with a new smile. He hid his sadness well, but I could tell he was still upset about the whole ordeal.
Alright. You need to sleep and I need to make dinner. I'll wake you up when dinner is done.
Matthew gently pressed me back into the bed, resolved in what had happened. Steal a kiss. I couldn't let him leave without doing something. I quickly pulled Matthew down to me, lifted my head and gently kissed him, softly laying a hand on his cheek to keep his face close. Matthew stared in deep surprise before hesitantly kissing me back, caressing my cheek and slightly melting at the touch of our lips. A soft sigh escaped his lips before he slowly pulled away with a smile. He gently licked his lips, making me go red in the face at the simple gesture. He let out a satisfied sigh before nuzzling my forehead.
Go to sleep.
And with that, he stood up and left the room, leaving me to rest as per his request. I smiled to myself before relaxing into the mattress. Oh, Diana. I suddenly tensed up. I felt majorly uneasy. Something wasn't right. I felt it in my core. She must be here. The thought of her in the house infuriated me beyond belief. I had to make sure she was not here. I rolled out of bed and quickly left my room, wandering the halls and listening closely. She was a demon, but I was listening very intently. There was no way she would be able to sneak up on me. And I guess I'll leave it off here for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!